I started to see, wow, these horses are doing something, not because they're complying or submitting or because they're forced to. They're doing it because they want to, because they trust Jeannie to say, this person plus me, plus this thing we can do. And honestly, when we're looking at developmental trauma, that's what's needed. Complex trauma is not only about the abuse and neglect and the events, but it's also about what happened as the self was developing.
Because that's like an ultimate trust, to be able to go through those strange, sometimes moving in the wind things.
And realizing that, oh, okay, well, we'll get there. It's okay, we'll get there. Kind of the ends justify the means. And the ends do not justify the means for me.
The horse is understanding you, they trust you, you can do anything.
In my world of trauma-informed therapies and relationality and integrating from developmental trauma and healing from developmental trauma. And so we came up with a 7-module program, which is called EASE. Okay. And can we look at each other at all, or is that?
Yeah, you guys can look at each other.
Okay, I know.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jeannie Shepard.
And I'm Barbara Collier. And that's freedom.
And that's freedom.
Yes.
She wanted her 2 cents worth as well.
Equinimity is a nonprofit that is intended to be somatically based, trauma-informed, ways to support people in integrating and healing from their trauma, and to give people access to this type of work that don't normally have access to it.
So we established Equinimity in 2017. We'd been working together for about a year. We'd met about a year prior to that. And we were talking about what we were going to call this, and I have a partner who's a wordsmith. He was talking about our sense of equanimity and our sense of caring about everybody and everything. And he said, well, the horse is equus, equine, so you could put both words together and call it equanimity. And it really stuck.
It was a
like,
given.
Yeah, there was no question.
It
It was just, that was the name.
That's the name. That's definitely the name. So everything that we offer here, number one, has a sliding scale. And most of the things that we offer, except for our EASE program, goes all the way down to 0. And what I learned in private practice was I would tell people, here's my sliding scale. And I would do a little research to figure out, I wanted like the top end of my sliding scale, if I could, to have it be kind of the low end of what was in private practice for therapy, and then have the low end of my sliding scale be hopefully doable for a wider socioeconomic field of people. And then I would tell people, just pick what feels doable for you in that. And that if something doesn't feel doable, please let me know. And if something changes in your world financially, please let me know, because I would rather you have the continuity of care rather than stop therapy because of finances. But it's been good practice, I think, and we really keep each other in check. It's like, is this part of our value system? And so we've said no to many things, and we go slower. And we also don't really do a lot of social media, so this is new for us. There's a woman, her name is Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams, and she says, go at the speed of trust. And that's really, we're going at the speed of like consent and relationality and all of it, so that's been really, really lovely. And I should say, the part of our journey is the Bear Sisters. So there's a group of drummers that come to the office, and so in the morning, they drum on Sunday, and in the morning I would find a little cash by the water cooler. I'm like, this is so interesting. So I just put it in a little envelope, and then that cash started to grow. And then Jeannie and I were doing in this way of like, kind of being in our place of practicing what is enough. And so I thought, well, what if we take this money from the Bear Sisters and pay ourselves a minimum, whatever we, and then go from there. That can help support us do more. And she said, sure. So that's really kind of how the principles of Equinimity started. And I thought, well, what if we start a nonprofit and people can donate? And we both were liking that idea, so we started a nonprofit, and that's how we came to be. And that's, I think, a big part of our story. And we decided to read this book called The Decolonizing Wealth. And that was really became part of like, oh, that's a good book for any nonprofit. And it talks about how hierarchical that is and how oppressive it is. And we didn't want really any part of that. And so we decided not to really work with grants. And so that just means something else entirely. I'm a trauma therapist, and I've been a trauma therapist since 2004. And I've been working at this property renting here since 2008. And in my world of trauma work, I've really always incorporated the body and nature. Both of us really felt like maybe one of the primary woundings is where the people are kind of primarily disconnected from themselves. Head is separate from body, and body is separate from nature. And so on top of all of that is what stacks our trauma. And so this place, in the way that it feels to be here with the horses, we really hope to offer it up for people to be back in their bodies, come home to themselves, and then also reconnect with nature in such a way that it helps integrate from trauma. But do you want to say anything more about natural horsemanship?
Yeah, I actually got my first horse when I was only 12 and she was 1. So we kind of grew up together, which is learning by mistakes mostly. Eventually, I was able to find out about various trainers who had different styles of working with horses and relating to people about how to work with horses. And so I started researching their work and going to their workshops and clinics and things. And eventually I came across a natural horsemanship program that was developed by a man named Pat Pirelli. I witnessed people that I worked with who had never had a horse before and bought young horses that hadn't been trained and trained them through this program totally successfully, going out on quiet trail rides and, within a couple of years' time, which I thought was totally amazing. And so I was really sold on the system, and it just opened up a lot of doors for me as far as learning how to relate to people in a better way. Long story short, I stayed in the program and I got the opportunity to go to California and work on a big ranch and learned from a lot of foals. We were foaling out the mares and training the foals with this natural horsemanship program from the day they were born. And it was really fun and really educational. And then when I left California, I really wanted to get involved somehow with horses in therapy. And I knew that what I had learned through the Pirelli program would really benefit any horse that needed to be in a therapy program to be able to deal with the kind of things that they would have to deal with, and found out that they really want to deal with. So I ended up getting a job in Arizona in this southeast corner of the state, finding a place for my horse to live. I found Barbara and we started meeting each other with the horses, and it just really clicked. And when she asked me to work with her, it was like exactly what I was looking for. So it's been really fun.
It's been really fun, yeah. And so when Jeannie and I met, Jeannie does relationship-based work with horses, essentially, and she'll tell you about. And so what I learned is that my training in the trauma world and doing somatic experiencing with children and adults was directly the same as the work that Jeannie was doing in her work with horses. And so in the human world, what that means when I take into account working somatically with somebody, I'm taking into account what their body is doing. I'm listening to what they're saying or what they're doing, but I'm also paying attention to, are they engaged? Are they present? Are they able to take in information? Are they feeling relatively safe enough, or something in their system kind of going, oh, this doesn't feel safe, this doesn't feel safe? And that's where we start. So it really opened up a lot when I met Jeannie, and it just became the foundation upon which we work. At the basis of like how I treat humans is the way that she treats horses, and vice versa. And so that's the foundation, one of the foundation pieces. We have in developmental trauma, that's a big complex umbrella for trauma, which means that something or many things happen in our early stages of development. And so complex trauma is not only about the abuse and neglect and the events, but it's also about what happened as the self was developing. And so when children experience trauma in their early years, childhood development trauma, they have a really difficult time understanding who they are. And so this is a whole complex thing that I could talk about in great detail, but we can save that for another video. But and so it really has to do with, was that child seen? Were they understood? Were they welcomed? Did they feel a relative degree of safety? Did they feel like they could ask questions? And so part of recovering from that is reestablishing some type of relational support that feels safe enough to be seen and to heal. And so I have a saying, kind of relationships heal relational trauma. And so it's nice to have it human to human, but the relationships can also be like, how do we feel like we belong in nature? And how do we feel like we belong with humans and horses and dogs and critters that are around here? And I believe that our true sense of belonging is best found in nature and is reflected back to us in nature and by animals. What's first and foremost for me is consent. Consent and having a consensual process. I'm very, very sensitive to imbalanced power dynamic. I loved horses my entire life, but we did a lot of moving and I never had a horse myself. And but I loved working with horses and being with horses. I was the kid who every gift-giving holiday asked for a pony and never got one, but it was all fine. I had that sort of dream tucked away nicely. It came to fruition, and I did a program in town ended up giving me a horse. And I ended up learning a lot from him. That was a horse named Flash, who I ended up retiring. But he helped me really understand a lot more about power dynamics, because especially in the horse world, there's the conventional horse world and then there's the natural horse world. And so I was here and he was living out here, and I would come out of the office and he would immediately walk away from me. Like, nope, I'm not working. And so I would just say, well, I guess we're not working today, because I wanted him to be able to say yes, no, maybe, just like I want to be able to reserve the right to say yes, no, maybe. And I heard from people, well, he really loves to work. He really loves he loves it. Just go get him. Just go put the halter on him and go get him and start the work. It'll be fine. So I did do that, and it was fine-ish, but there was still something as I was reading in his body language, some tightening, some bracing, some like he wasn't able to be his full self. So it was either like, that felt to me like power over. If I just went and got him, I was like, I was power overing all of his no, and realizing that, oh, okay, well, we'll get there. It's okay, we'll get there. Kind of the ends justify the means. And the ends do not justify the means for me. So it was either I powered over him, or I was like, I guess we're not working today. And so then that felt like a little power under, and I didn't even know if that's what he really wanted. So just in the course of like really understanding more natural horsemanship, there's a middle way. And that middle way is this power with. And it's a way of watching the horse's cues and watching for the no and waiting for the yes, setting up for success in that, so we can be on horse time. And I just was never on horse time before. And so in really spending time and observing Jeannie, that really settled into my system of like, oh, there's this whole other way to have this nonverbal communication. And it was an entirely different experience from there. The initial conditions of me establishing like, I matter, you matter, I'm going to listen to you, and can we figure out a way that we can listen to each other so that some synergy can happen? That was a game changer. So that kind of started this whole thing on power over, power under, and power with. So then when we started doing sessions together, it was really beautiful and fun. And we worked with children, we worked with adults. We kind of just blended our two worlds, and we did that for many years. There's this beautiful sort of image of like, you can't you can't grow a crop by pulling on it. It just doesn't grow that way. And so we kind of really take that into consideration. It has this unfolding and enfoldment process. We decided to take 2022, and Jeannie and I just worked at it over 2022 collaboratively to say, like, how can we make more sense of what we're doing, and how can we kind of shape the clay of this? In the Pirelli world, you can kind of speak more about this too, there's a specific format that Jeannie will go through with the horses to support them in being relational and having success and having a good partnership with the horse and human. And so we use that as a platform, and then worked with the principles in my world of trauma-informed therapies and relationality and integrating from developmental trauma and healing from developmental trauma. And so we came up with a 7-module program, which is called EASE. So we have a 7-module program that we created that is specifically for working with developmental and complex trauma. And that is, it can be an intensive and immersive experience where people come in and they stay for 3.5 days, and we do all 7 modules, a couple modules a day, or people can do it 1 a week. We're doing a couple once a month. And so do you want to speak to how the horses blend in with that?
Yeah, when I attended the Pirelli school and practiced their techniques with my own horses and some of my clients' horses, I found that following this process that Pat Pirelli had developed based on what he called the 7 games. And the 7 games are based on observing how horses communicate with each other. So it was designed to teach people how to emulate another horse so that the horse they're working with can understand what they're trying to say to them, because obviously they don't understand the words that are coming out of our mouth. They understand our intention, they understand our emotions, but if we don't know how to communicate with the horse on a nonverbal level, then there's a lot of confusion that goes on. So those 7 games are the basis of building step by step by step by step up to where the horse is totally trusting, understands what you're saying because you've learned how to speak their language, you've learned their body signals, you know, the ears, the muscles, the lips, all the things that horses do that relate to how they're feeling. And you're able to build that up to the point where, okay, the horse is understanding you, they trust you, you can do anything. So the limits are...
They're endless.
Endless.
It's really beautiful to watch. Yeah. And so in my world of working with trauma, you know, I started to see, wow, these horses are doing something, you know, not because they're complying or submitting or because they're forced to, they're doing it because they want to, because they trust Jeannie and others who work with Jeannie to say, oh, this person plus me, plus this thing we can do. And honestly, when we're looking at developmental trauma, that's what's needed. You know, there has to be a sense of reestablishment of this relational safety. And so just to take that, so we, in the talking about this and the shaping of the clay, we've blended, it's really like a complete blending of the 7 games plus the things that are needed in the trauma world to support integration and trauma healing and recovery. And so this establishes, this is how we're gonna be together. And we can come back to this. If something feels weird, or if we get it wrong, or if there's some kind of rupture, we can repair by coming back to this foundation. We don't have to recreate the wheel. It's not rocket science. It's really tried and true relational safety, presence, awareness, boundaries. Boundaries are so important in a relationship. Boundaries actually can make the relationship just excel. They're not barriers. They don't limit things. They allow us to be our whole self. They allow the other person and the other beings to be their whole self. And then there's synergy. It's really exciting. In the process of going through these experiences, they're really 7 experiential modules. it speeds up my work as a therapist. If I'm in the office doing sort of the brick and mortar work of being in an office, it can take so many one-on-one sessions to get to these places, which can happen experientially it's not accelerated, it's just gets really in the body. And so there's something about when humans are with, 1,000-pound mammals, maybe not all of them aren't 1,000 pounds, so you have a little man, but that helps it come outside of us and we can see it in this other context. And when the horses show up, they're not, they're not trained to show up in these ways. They just show up because they're caring, they're loving, they're curious, and they're harmonious. So our horses really live in a herd together, which has been really in your heart and soul, and so that they live pretty peacefully together. So they have the same exact nervous systems as we do. They have the same tools for dealing with chronic stress, with trauma, with potential and perceived and actual threat as we do. And so yet they don't get stuck in their survival mode. They actually constantly come out of survival mode and come back to what I call sustainable physiology. And we as humans don't tend to do that because we've lost that. We've lost home, being here and being here and being here. And so in these immersive experiences, it doesn't have to be these immersive experiences, but it can happen in such an abundant way that it really brings the body home all at once, and it's really beautiful. And I just want to share it with more people in a way that feels doable and growable. And so I think that covers most everything.
I think it really
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
I do want to say that we are really, really fortunate to have the horses in our care. We've got 5 horses and a pony, and they are so involved. They really do love the work, and they support each other. They take turns working with clients. The stories we could tell are just phenomenal, and go on and on and on.
Yeah.
But
That's really a little bit about who we are and how we came into being here and what we hope for in this program called EASE for Developmental and Complex Trauma. And thank you. Thank you both.
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You guys actually do a really good job. I was
Over.
shaking the entire time.
Where's my water?
I know.